Pius Dea is the name of the religion that was created hundreds of years ago, where even time has erased its exact date of origin, along with the veracity of its historical information. Not only is Kherson the capital of the Republic, but for countless species across the galaxy, Kherson represents the pinnacle of progress, opportunity, and power. The path to ascend Kherson's social hierarchy is fierce. The inequalities are as marked as the reflection of its city. On the one hand, its resplendent urban landscape with skyscrapers that defy the clouds where the elite and powerful reside, to the lowest levels of Kherson, mired in darkness and poverty. Still, the promise of opportunity continues to draw crowds, and the determination to reach the heights of Kherson persists in countless minds. As time passed within the capital city, different Khersanti began asking communities to take drastic measures against corruption, purging incorrigible elements to restore purity. In the darkest and most disadvantaged corners of Kherson, hopelessness created roots in all of the forgotten. Corruption and indifference left large populations in poverty, disease, and despair. Any spark of hope becomes a tempting beacon for these places, even if it manifests through false promises or manipulated with religious doctrines. False religions, deceivers, and manipulators find fertile ground in the hearts of those who suffer. Pius Dea was built over the centuries until it became a religion that influenced large portions of the population of Kherson. With its faith totally devoted to its only duty, known as the goddess, the religion of Pius Dea was indoctrinating its practitioners to an idea of spiritual purity and a humanocentric philosophy. That is, an attitude that places human beings at the center or as the main focal point of the universe, considering humans as the most important or dominant species, granting them a higher status or greater importance relative to other species. The Outer Rim is the largest region in the galaxy, the least explored, and the most diverse in terms of population and culture. The followers of Pius Dea consider this territory to be in total chaos, as this is the territory furthest from the center of galactic civilization, the influence of all the civilized planets, in the words of the population of the core, and the distance so far from Kherson and its institutions, has caused a completely absent law of order where crimes and abuses often go unnoticed or unchecked. With this amorphous state, the parishioners of the Pius Dea believed that they had a mandate to defeat chaos in exchange for obtaining divine treasures and secrets. With favor directed toward human supremacy, Pius Dea regarded many alien species as irredeemable, due to their supposed inferior position and the threat they posed to the human civilization of the core worlds. Pius Dea could have remained just another religion in history. However, a key figure for this sect emerged to take it to the top: the human Khersanti, Contispex I. In his early years, Contispex rose to prominence in the Kherson Merchants Guild, and propelling himself through the ranks, he became a powerful figure in the Pius Dea faith. Contispex's power increased more and more as he supported the moral code of religion, despising and hating corruption and vices, thus forging the image of a very beloved figure in the public opinion. However, intolerance towards anyone who didn't share his high standards and ideologies also grew within him. Around the year 12,000 before Battle of Yavin, the election for the new Supreme Chancellor took place, with the winner being Pius Dea, a both-and male politician. Years later, he was removed from the position of Chancellor thanks to the manipulations led by the Pius Dea sect, and it was during 11,987 before Battle of Yavin that Pius Dea lost his life in an attack. For the vast majority of the population of Kherson, the murder was a shocking and strange event, since such a well-known personality with enough resources to maintain security in his environment had been eliminated so easily. No one knew who was the perpetrator of such an action, only Contispex. The Malkite Poisoners are adept assassins who trained in and perfect their poisoning arts on the planet Malki, where they got their ingredients for many of their deadly poisons. They were a highly secret group and were responsible for helping Contispex in his rise to power as Supreme Chancellor of the Galactic Republic. Given the dismissal of Perslia, the choice, and by an overwhelming difference, was Contispex, who a few years ago had already actively entered politics, having been a member of the Senate. Thus, it was that in the year 11,987 before Battle of Yavin, Contispex I became the Supreme Chancellor, becoming the fourth to acquire the position since the birth of the Republic. With the rise of Contispex, Pius Dea assured absolute control over the central political and economic machinery of the government of the Republic, dismissing all his adversaries. Throughout the government, only members of the sect held the most crucial bureaucratic position, and even many of these fundamental roles became hereditary, consolidating the power of the sect at the cost of fostering a culture of nepotism within the government of the Republic. Contispex, as Supreme Chancellor and with the government of the Republic, now with theocratic overtones, promoted a call to communities to remain incorruptible by controlling themselves. The Pius Dea faith began to teach that the fallen communities were to be restored to purity by purging their wildest and primitive elements. Furthermore, the humanocentric vision of religion caused a pro-human feeling in the Republic. With the institutions under the power of Contispex and Pius Dea, and the fervor and support of a large part of the population, it was time to take the next step. For context, around the year 15,000 before Battle of Yavin, more than 3,000 years ago before Contispex's control, the event called the Hutt Cataclysms took place. A civil war marked by great violence, betrayal, and widespread devastation. The exact details and causes of the cataclysms vary according to different sources and legends, but generally refer to a series of internal power struggles, wars, and upheavals between the Hutt clans. These conflicts often involve fierce territorial disputes, fights for dominance, and clashes for control of lucrative criminal enterprises, spy trade routes, and research-rich planets within Hutt space. The consequences were devastating for Hutt-controlled space, leaving the Hutt homeworld of Vard in ruins, along with other former colonies that became inhospitable deserts. In response to this war and with the aim of preventing future outbreaks of war between clans, the Hutt established a Council of Elders. This new authority promoted a philosophy called Kajidich, which advocated fierce competition between clans as a means of identifying and separating the strongest individuals of the Hutt species from the weak. This philosophy, contrary to open war and territorial conquest, rejected the use of war methods used by species considered inferior, that is, those who were not Hutt. Rather than resort to military conquest and enslavement as they had previously done, the Hutts instead opted to subtly rule from within. They changed their headquarters to Evokar, renaming it Nalhuta, where the Council of Elders was established to represent the different Hutt clans. The decisions of this council were binding of any Hutt who claimed clan rights, thus preventing rivalries between the Hutts from leading to conflict. Much of the rise of the Hutts was from centuries of taking slaves and taking advantage of wars allied to the Republic, but which were far from the core and care of Cursant and were closer to Hutt space on its periphery. Contispex called from the Republic to the purge of those elements that had no forgiveness, since their only salvation, according to the word of Pius Dea and the will of the goddess, will be annihilation. Thus, these purges will take the form of endless wars, and numerous exotic species will be considered irredeemable and exterminated. Starting the Pius Dea Crusades. Exalting pro-human sentiment, the Supreme Chancellor Contispex launched the first of his crusades. In 11,965 before Battle of Yavin, a preemptive strike against the Hutts beyond the Rim. From the most central territory controlled by the Republic, the portion called the Slice, Contispex advanced beyond Republic's borders toward Hutt space. The attacks traversed along the near hyperlane and were also launched from two of the Republic's Ordnance regional depot outposts situated outside its territory, Orth Wylan and Orth Indar. Apparently, at the beginning, the acceptance and enthusiasm for these crusades, purging the sin of those beings who are lacking the genotype and phenotype of a human being, were well received, since starting with the first Pius Dea Crusade, the Republic carried out at least 34 crusades at various regions along the Republic's borders. After 40 years of service, the Supreme Chancellor Contispex I stepped down from the position to make way for his successor, his son Contispex II, as Supreme Chancellor in the year 11,947 before Battle of Yavin. This transition of leader didn't change anything regarding the Divine Purge. Under the biological and ideological dynastic successors of Contispex I, the Crusades continued, all being covered and excused under the same philosophy of religion, and all launched with the Pius Dea rally and crying of "The Goddess wills it." In the year 11,939 before Battle of Yavin, the Hutts once again became victims of theocratic rule. The forces of the Republic began to attack the southern ends of the Hutt space, launching their forces from the edge of the Republic space. One fleet moved from Or Gustav to Snif and then Chalakta, while an additional two fleets were launched from Orthavel against Sivoria in the northern region of Hutt space. The Third Crusade will be followed 19 years later in 11,920 before Battle of Yavin by a Fourth Crusade against the Hutts, continuing a trend of religious persecution. The strategy was attacking the region north of Hutt space, launching an assault from Centaurus, continuing along the hyperspace route and conquering world after world in order to keep commanding fleets from Orth Sat and Orth Namurt. The Jedi Order struggled to find the right response to the madness of Pius Dea government. In 11,933 before Battle of Yavin, it declared itself no longer subject to Republic rule, retreating to Ossus. After years of attacking the Hutts, Contispex's successors continued the divine cult, diversifying their victims. Thus, it was that in the year 11,884 before Battle of Yavin, more than 80 years after the First Crusade, the Seventh Pius Dea Crusade, more commonly known as the Great Northern Crusade, took place. The Contispex dynasty of Supreme Chancellors launched a military campaign against the Savrak and Ithorian species. The crusade consisted of attacks against the homeworlds of alien species, all of which were located in the northern Outer Rim territories. The Republic launched forces from Orth Mantel against the homeworld of the Ithorians, and used Orth Cantrell and Orth Meglamin as staging points against the Savrak homeworld. With each war incursion within the Republic, they saw this practice as increasingly repugnant. Each leader descended from Contispex, whether a member of the lineage or not, had as an excuse the will of his deity, the goddess, and the mission initiated by Contispex I. The opponents of the Pius Dea Religion and the Supreme Chancellor, in turn, were not long in coming. However, the power of the cult was so great that each dissatisfied political figure couldn't last as a rival to the power of Pius Dea. Witch hunts exposed alien partisans in the Senate, and commissars were attached to military units to root out heretics and apostates. The outlaws were exiled or imprisoned, their property confiscated for pontifical auction, and their families blacklisted from political or military life for generations, breaking the power of many ancient Republic dynasties. To Pius Dea followers, chaos lurked beyond the rim, and the will of the goddess was that it be beaten back, with great treasures and secrets awaiting those who advance her from her cause. Pius Dea scouts pushed beyond the frontier, and many an intrepid star sailor made a name and a fortune privateering for the Pius Dea. Like most Republic institutions, the Navy became a Pius Dea stronghold. Although the cult had originated with humans, as the struggle dragged on thousands of planets, the defeated populations could retain autonomy through conversion, and individuals could move freely between worlds if they joined the military. During the year 11,707 before Battle of Yavin, the 11th Pius Dea Crusade took place, more than 250 years after the first incursion by Contispex I. After war against the Hutt, the Sabrak, and Ithorian, now it will be his turn to invade and save to the Heretics. The Cathedral Ships were the flagships of Pius Dea to subjugate alien worlds. Due to a culture of nepotism and patronage within the Pius Dea-controlled Republic bureaucracy, they were commanded by missionaries and manned by descendants of Republic Navy crew who had joined the sect. On different key worlds controlled by the Republic, so-called Ordnance regional depots were placed. The Ords served as home bases from which naval units and missionaries alike pushed beyond the frontier into alien chaos, with the plunder of countless infidel worlds ferried back to Cursant in the valleys of Navy galleons. That is the reason why so many worlds began with the word Orth, O-R-D, like Orth Mantell. When existing worlds were revealed as impure or new founts of chaos were found, the Navy will advance and deploy troops by the millions. Those who emerged alive from the battle have demonstrated their purity, winning great rewards for themselves and their families. Those who died had their impurities washed away by sacrifice. As mentioned previously, the Jedi Order, after seeing the madness unleashed within the Republic they had sworn to serve, began the Recusal within the Jedi history, which was the Order's response against Pius Dea. The Recusal set off centuries of recrimination and debate within the Order's ranks, and saw the birth of numerous splinter factions. Seeing the outlook so discouraging, some knights responded to the call of their morality and they became knights errant, carrying out unsanctioned missions against the cultists while the Order looked the other way. A misguided few became Pius Dea champions, a kind of mercenaries, and after the Crusades ended, this splinter group will survive as a fanatical group called as the Order of the Terrible Glare. But most Jedi sat out the Crusades, despising the Pius Dea cause, but unwilling to take up arms against the civilization they had safeguarded. As time went by, the political and religious expansion of the corrupt Republic didn't stop. In 11,660 before Battle of Yavin, the 12th Crusade against Saracens and Terrasants took place. In 11,591 before Battle of Yavin was the 15th Crusade against Varawin, and in 11,198 before Battle of Yavin, the 23rd Crusade against Bothans and Lanix. By the 11,100 before Battle of Yavin, the Crusade's forward momentum had finally stalled, and the goddess's purifying gaze turned inward. Inquisition soared through the colonies and the core itself, with the impure, tried, condemned, and destroyed in mass trials. But at the same time, a desperate plan was taking shape. The Kamasi came to Assos, pleading with the Jedi Order to abandon its centuries of recusal. The Jedi agreed. To save the galaxy, they will remove the Chancellor, suspend the Senate, and take over the Republic, but they will need help. And so, a secret fate began to spread among the Pius Dea adherents, a heresy masterminded by the Kamasi and stoked by Jedi agents. In 10,967 before Battle of Yavin, The heretics declared themselves, and the Pius Dea ranks were centered by the Renunciation, a splinter faction made of the so-called Renunciates. Generational warships, wars, and government offices witnessed terrible battles between the faithful and the Renunciates. Even the Alsacan battle cruisers attacked Pius Dea strongholds, backed by Jedi privateers and vessels commanded by Herclic, Duros, and Hutt slave species. The fight for the Republic had begun. A year later, it was over. The Bureau of Ships and Services was one of the few galactic institutions that had not been taken over by the Pius Dea faith. The Voss heard the Kamasi plea and agreed to abandon the traditional neutrality. To purge the galaxy of the disease that was devouring it, the Bureau secretly seeded Pius Dea warships with rogue Navi-computed code. When Voss sent out the signal, thousands upon thousands of Pius Dea warships leapt into hyperspace, never to be seen again. Caught unawares, with their offensive and defensive systems inoperable, the helpless Cathedral Ships were methodically destroyed. The Jedi seized Contispex I on the Bridge of Flame of Synthara. The last Pius Dea Chancellor was tried on Camas and imprisoned there, denying all contact with his followers. Meanwhile, the Jedi did as they had promised, revealing the Senate and the Republic under the leadership of Vel Ductavis, who served simultaneously as the Supreme Chancellor and the Jedi Grand Master. Within a few generations, the Pius Dea faith survived only on Cathedral Ships that had emerged in trackless space with their Navi-computers wiped clean and their engines and communication systems disabled. Aboard these doomed vessels, the faithful were free to pursue their mad dreams of purity, while crawling toward distant suns they will never reach.